I will call to order the Thursday, December 9th, 2021 Town of North Andover Community Preservation Committee meeting. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted via both in-person and remote means. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means, as we see how that works. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we'll post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in the public meeting, please email your questions or comments prior to the meeting to dbeckley@northandoverma.gov. The question or comment will be provided to the committee before the meeting or read during the proceedings if received during or shortly after the meeting. That being said, thank you, everyone, for attending. This is our annual public hearing. As stated in our bylaws for the Community Preservation Committee, we are charged at least annually with studying needs, possibilities, and resources for the town regarding community preservation, and part of that includes hearing from members of the public about various priorities and what folks would like to see community preservation dollars spent on. With regards to our agenda this evening, I'm actually going to, since we delayed 15 minutes, I'm going to take this out of order and move straight to the public hearing. We can deal with our minutes and financial reports after you guys have gone on with your night. So what I'd like to do this evening, we have obviously a number of folks here who have expressed some interest in various things that the Community Preservation Act does. What I'd like to ask if folks can come to the podium one at a time with any questions, projects, ideas that you may have, things that you'd like the committee to hear, or feedback that you'd like to get from the committee about ideas or projects that you have. I don't have a particular order because I don't know how many different groups are here this evening, but if we could do so in an orderly manner, come to the podium or sit at the table and discuss. First of all, let us know who you are, what organization you're representing, or if you're not representing an organization, just your address, and we'd be happy to chat about whatever projects or ideas that you may have. Does that sound good to you guys? Okay, great. Who would like to go first? No one? By all means, thank you very much, sir. That'll get us started.
Can I sit here?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yep.
Can I cast to the screen?
I think might be asking a lot the way our night has started, but we can certainly.
I brought hard copy.
We can certainly try.
My name is Theodore Kelly. I live at 214 Sutton Hill Road. I represent myself. I'm a resident since 1997.
Welcome.
And I'm here to figure out how to proceed with a project to repair the boat ramp for Lake Kachikowick.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of exhibits I'll share with you. Dan was instrumental in helping me kind of get myself organized and how to proceed with getting this information started. Thank you. Getting an understanding of how to work through the committee to get a application submitted for consideration for the community preservation.
Okay.
The boat ramp, as you can see on page 1, is located right off 133 on Great Pond Road, and the second page shows an enlargement of it. It has fallen into pretty bad disrepair. If we go to the page 3 of this handout, I've got a couple pictures. I brought a lot more that I could show if we could project. But the asphalt is broken down considerably, and it's basically not quite unusable, but it's very precarious. If you're trying to back down that ramp carrying a boat, you could easily fall where the asphalt is broken and injure yourself pretty badly. It's pretty much inaccessible for a vehicle. Right? You can't even try to back a boat down there any longer. But I've been, luckily, my son and I like to fish a lot, and we've done quite a bit of fishing on the lake, but we can't really use it anymore trying to get our boat and vehicle in there. had some 2x12s that I was using for a while, but they became even unusable at that point. Some of this is broken off and is actually in the water. So when you do launch your boat in the water, there's a lot of obstacles in the way. On the next page, I've kind of sketched out just schematically a new ramp and just showing where we could fill in some of the gravel, dirt leading up to the ramp. Typically, a ramp's about a 50 foot long concrete slab generally, and they can be as wide as 18 feet or any narrower they get a little too tight to navigate. I blew this up on the next page to show it at scale. This is drawn at 1:20 scale. At the bottom here, you can see I've made a note about the retaining wall in here. It's a concrete, or it's a granite block retaining wall that's also in really bad repair. I mean, this thing is falling apart. And it might make sense to wrap this into one project. Selfishly, I'd like to see the boat ramp go first so we can start using it again, and then maybe take the retaining wall on as a separate project. But if it needs to, for permitting, I can see this being probably a big challenge. It's the water supply for the town. I'm not sure if even the state of Massachusetts has to get involved in this. I need to understand how we would proceed with a project like this. So it might make sense to do it once and do it right. Because if we have to build dams to do the work, you might want to just take that on once rather than twice to do it. But it maybe should be studied as to how much these should be combined into one project. Certainly the ramp's a lot more straightforward. It's basically a concrete slab. You you build a dam, you form and pour a concrete slab with rebar, you pull the dam and you're good. The retaining wall would be a much bigger effort, obviously. The next page is just a public domain schematic plan showing a ramp design. Right, it's a concrete slab at about 12 or 15% pitch. This shows a floating dock next to it. You don't have to have a floating dock. It would probably be nice if we could. It would make it easier getting in and out of boats, obviously, if you had one. And then this next page basically shows just kind of a rendering, those same photographs, if we just, as a crude, rendering by myself to say, here's what this might look like. And on the last page is just an analogy for what this looks like. This is the town of Methuen's boat ramp into the Merrimack River. And so this is, a photograph showing what this looks like if it were done in a similar manner. This ramp's twice as wide as what we need. This is big enough to launch 2 boats at once. So I'm thinking something half the size would be all you really need there for the lake. So that's pretty much what I'm proposing is to, do these repairs and, is it a bigger project to do the retaining wall or just keep it as one?
Sure.
So Dan showed me the form. I've got the form. I was going to start filling it out, but this scoping and, is really the discussion I think we need to have, and I'm looking for some advice on how to do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind to me is, like, when you're trying to get a number and really understand the whole scope and all the aspects, that maybe the way to start, and I know it's a longer process, but is to go out and get some estimates for what it would cost to do the design and, like, provide permit advice. Do that as one project up front. And so then you've got something that says this is what the plan should look like, and these are all the permitting things that are involved, and this is kind of your path. So that then in year 2 you have those drawings and you take them to a couple contractors and you say, what kind of a project does this sound like, and who are all the permitting people involved? Because you might need some technical advice on how to deal with different bureaucracies along the way. So that way you'd have, like, the first year is like your exploratory year. You talk to some experts, you get a drawing done, and then the second year you have sort of a really solid number for what it would cost, and you've anticipated all the, you're going to someone and saying, like, you're an expert on this. Tell us all the possible pitfalls so that we can have those ironed out. So when we go for town meeting, like next year's 2022, in 2023, we know exactly we've got all the angles figured out, and we're going for the funding that we need to, do the boat ramp and get it all done right and button everything up.
Have you met with DPW or?
Yeah, I did. Dan suggested, I talked to them, and I did send them an email, and they have nothing in their budget or in their long-range plan to address this. They did say, I sent them this set of schematics, and he was going to share it with the Friends of the Lake group. I'm not sure what governance they have over it in terms of approving projects. But he didn't, wasn't opposed to it. He just said they hadn't anything planned for it.
So that site, is that the pumping station?
It is at the pumping
Yeah.
station. Yeah.
So I was wondering, is there another site that would be better for a boat ramp, or?
I mean, there's really very bad access to the lake when you think about it.
Yeah, I know. I
And
agree.
This is the only place that, when I started looking around to get a boat in, this is the only place that had one. I mean, I never really did an assessment of if there's better locations, but this is the one that's got parking, that's off the road. It's controlled, there's a gate, there is already a ramp there, so it's kind of made sense to use it again.
And Dan and Terry just asked the question, there were certain restrictions to what CPA funds can be used for, and, this would seem to fall in the capital improvement category for, recreational land, so I think that would make it allowable.
Okay.
Ordinary maintenance is not, but I think this would be determined in the other direction, so that's at least a good thing in that regard. So, but I do think that Bill, your point of something like this, I would anticipate it's going to be probably a fairly expensive project, I would think.
I think the ramp itself would be in the 30 to 50K range.
Okay.
If you're going to do that whole retaining wall, then you're up over 100,000.
Different story, right? Okay.
And that's where I'm saying if we could maybe plan it out as one big project, but phase it potentially, or fund it potentially as two projects, because that bigger one could, take, months and, hundreds of thousands of dollars and a lot of engineering and,
Sure.
it's kind of hard to think of them separately, but selfishly I'd like to just get the boat ramp going.
Well, if one's not, dependent upon the other necessarily,
Yeah,
but
you could phase them for sure.
yeah.
I would also agree with Bill, because I don't know all the agencies you'd be dealing with, but environmental protection, you get the state road right there, you've got the Conservation Commission to worry, you got our water department, I mean, you've got,
Yeah,
where do you stop?
The permitting is going to be the hardest part of it.
Yeah, I think the ramp itself might be the easy part.
Well,
For sure, for
with,
sure.
with the good news that we're not creating a new one.
Right.
That one,
We can call it a repair, right? And it's
Right.
fixing it. But in terms of the state, would the state be involved in this?
I don't know.
So
you
you
know-
can answer those questions for us.
For either DPW or even perhaps the planning board,
Planning board?
who has purview over.
said the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, I figured, conservation, the board, the health department, everyone here, everyone downstairs will
Yeah.
get a
Yes.
full look at this thing.
Yeah.
Just
But-
ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, but I'm just curious if we need the state to have to look
You know what,
at
they'll
it.
tell you.
Yeah, I think they would tell you, and I'd probably talk to Gene in the planning department as well, since they do have purview over the lake.
Okay. Well, great.
The only reason why I said the state is because that's a state road, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
But if you're not altering the curb cut,
I was gonna say, you're not doing anything to the curb cut, so
it should be,
yeah.
it should be good.
In terms of trying to get design, estimates done in thinking of this as, maybe one big project phased in two phases, is there a preference for who we engage with on that? I mean, it's a fair amount of, you could do a fair amount of design work there. And you could even expand the use. I mean, you could put a nice dock along that whole retaining wall and really provide better access than just the ramp.
Well, I'd say like a lot of it is, since it's publicly funded, right, it's got to be publicly procured. So, when all we do is recommend to town meeting that this project should get funded, and that the amount kind of falls in the right ballpark. So we're not like a procurement thing or anything like that. The town has to do that, and they have to do that following all the rules of posting bids and the whole nine on
I
that.
think he's actually you're looking for some better estimates.
Yeah, so what you could do, so what I would say is you go out and talk to a few consultants and say like, what's your ballpark number for something like this? Then you have a placeholder to take to us and say, like, I talked to 4 people, and this is the kind of scope that they gave me, you know, this is the work that'll be done, it'll be about this much, and then we hand it over to,
Correct. And then we-
town.
Yeah, we put it forward, the recommendation to town meeting
Town meeting.
to be voted on at that point, and then when the project actually goes to get funded, it gets drawn against that account. So then, that's
So
where you,
the actual procurement and execution happens through the town?
correct,
yeah.
correct. The town, or whoever the applicant happens to be at that point, with this being in the care and custody of the town, would,
Is that Gene responsible for the, that particular area of procurement and stuff like that? Because I'm just thinking, point of contact,
Probably be the best first
Yeah.
contact,
Point of
Gene
contact.
Enright.
yeah.
because she'll have a wealth of information. She won't send you out to Kansas for a consultant, so.
Now, I'm looking for local people that we put in the town for the
Yeah.
town before doing public projects.
But she knows them.
Okay, all right, I'll start with them.
So, and it almost seems like, to me, I'm just saying, he almost need to do this in 2 different years. Like, the first year, come and get the money to do all the drawings and do all the
Engineering.
engineering and that, and then come back once you have all the answers for the amount of money for the
'Cause-
project. Because obviously, I don't think you want to front that, so.
No, and at that point, you could honestly put it forward as 2 options, right? You could put together the wish list option and say, we've looked at, hey, this would be great for docks, and or you can have Plan B and, you know, the scaled down version with, you know, varying costs, and
Okay.
put it forward to the town with that. Are there any other opportunities for matching dollars or any other funding sources that would be out there for part of this? We'll give that some thought, and if we can think of any, we'll let you know.
All right.
You know, not that we're trying to punt it out of here, but just,
Yeah.
you know, if costs do get to a certain point, sometimes there's other
Yeah, I
opportunities.
mean, that's what Dan said, go to DPW first, they, you know, they
Yeah.
manage and maintain that area.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have anything in their funding for it, so.
Okay. All right.
No, it's great work. I mean, it's really a lot of work. You know, it's great detail and.
How big of a boat can that accommodate?
What's that?
How big of a boat?
Oh, the restrictions are 14 feet or less.
I probably should have known that. Yeah, okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Just gonna appreciate it. And thank you for breaking the ice for the rest of this crowd, too. Who would like to go next? Yes, sir. Evening, how are you?
I'm Brian Howard. I'm the Executive Director of the North Andover Historical Society.
Welcome.
And you may already be familiar with the project that we're working on at the Stevens Center at 800 Mass Ave, the former textile museum. And that is just one piece of a much larger campus that we're responsible for. And of course, our original home is right next door at 153 Academy Road. The Johnson Cottage, the original cottage, which dates back to the late 1700s. The Caretaker's residence, a breezeway, and what we are now calling our Founders Hall, which was constructed in the early part of the 20th century. This is an iconic structure in the town's old center and is in need of some upgrades to not only maintain it in good order, but also to get it ready for the influx of visitors we're expecting when our entire campus is up and running in 2022. And we want to make some strategic investments in making sure that this facility is not only safe and usable, but also fully accessible to the general public, situation that it's not right now. About 10 years ago, the CPA funded an architectural survey of the Johnson Cottage, and the recommendations which were made, we have implemented some of the others which have a lot to do with handicapped accessibility and also usability of the complex are still in process. So what we're looking for is a couple different areas. First and foremost, these accessibility initiatives. We can't do a whole heck of a lot in terms of welcoming more than small groups into that facility without having fully modern, accessible restrooms and spaces. So we're looking to do things like creating a fully accessible restroom in the breezeway area. Building an accessible entrance to the space, one of the recommendations of the architectural survey from, I believe that was 2012, Mender's report. And also building or enhancing an accessible entry to the original cottage. Right now, you may be familiar with Academy Road, with the fence, and it's a pretty significant step up, probably 16 inches or so up that gully to get onto the sidewalk just to get into the original historic cottage. That's something that we really want to address, again, to ensure that we can make it as accessible as possible. The original 1789 structure as well is in need of some work. We've discovered some moisture intrusion in the basement, which is it's under the floorboards and could potentially be a pretty substantial remediation project in there, including perhaps pulling up the floor, which is about a century old, and excavating, laying down a vapor barrier, making sure that we're creating a safe space for our visitors to come in and to enjoy the cottage's historic nature. There's some minor chimney repairs as well that we're looking to do, and then moving into the Founders Hall itself, the brick structure attached to the cottage, the original windows, the shutters that are on there have nearing the end of their usable life. And I would much rather see these original elements of the cottage and of the Founders Hall restored rather than replaced. So we're looking to make some investments there as well. Removing and cleaning and upgrading the original windows to the Founders Hall as well. There's the main doors that are in need of some repair, minor restoration. It's time for us to do that. By and large, though, our primary interest is in making sure that we're creating an accessible space for the general public. We're doing a lot of work next door to make sure that the Stevens Center is fully accessible for the general public, and we want to make sure that our other facilities are just as accessible or as accessible as they can be. So beyond that, we're responsible for the artifacts and archival materials that tell the story of the town's development, the people, the places, the events that have undergirded this region's identity for almost 400 years. And in order to properly preserve our collections, it's important that we make some investments in those. Digitization of our archives, for example, the scanning of our photograph collections. We just recently received a large collection of North Andover Citizen newspapers from the Stevens Memorial Library. Thank you very much. And we want to make sure that the information which is contained in those is digitized, put in a format so that that information can be used and shared long into the future. And other than that, our artifact collections, they come to us in all different conditions. And a lot of our materials are in need of a conservation assessment and perhaps some remediation work to ensure that, again, they are properly conserved for use in future exhibits, research, articles, publications, and so forth. So that's what we're looking at, and would certainly appreciate your consideration for investment to help us preserve our town's history.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions? I have a few. So you're planning on coming forward with a number of these projects this year, or?
Yes. I want to make sure that what we have in terms of accessibility, restoration, repair, and long-term preservation are appropriate for CPA funding.
I think accessibility we may end up having a challenge with. I know you referenced new restrooms or any kind of construction. I think that can be challenging from a CPA allowable standpoint. There's a flow chart, which if Dan hasn't shared that with you, I can make sure that you have it, that kind of runs you through, all right, is this project allowable? It starts with, is it a historic artifact or vessel or building? I think we check those boxes. Is it on the Register of Historic Places or designated by the Historic Commission? Obviously, yes. Yeah. And then it just comes down to the 4 criteria. Is it for acquiring, preserving, rehabbing, or restoring anything that's of a historic artifact or historic resource? Mm-hmm. So I think things like, again, without making an assessment on that, something such as the floor that you mentioned that has some water issues, that's a preservation, in my mind, a preservation project. Certainly all the archival of documents is a preservation. Rehabbing the new windows, the shutters, anything to do with the structure, if it's being rehabbed in a historic manner and meets all the criteria, absolutely. Where we run into challenges is on new construction type items.
Okay.
Is where we run out of room. So.
Okay. I didn't have this on this year's list, but I'll ask anyway. Something that we're looking at long term is the building. I think everybody here is familiar with the Johnson Cottage, and the Founders Hall is being painted all white. I think it's been that way for decades. The Founders Hall, as originally constructed, was bare brick, and it was designed by the same architect who designed the former Merrimack Valley Textile Museum, which is now, of course, being rehabbed into the Stevens Center for the Society. So what we'd be looking to do long term is to take some of the things like the shutter restoration, which I've mentioned, but utilizing that, implementing some other things, including the removal of the paint from the original brick, to make the campus, give the campus a more contiguous look, and bring it back to what it originally looked like when it was constructed.
Sounds like restoration to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay. All right. Okay. We'll pull together some numbers.
Excellent. Excellent. Look forward to seeing it. Any other questions? Oh, thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes. By all means. People will be fighting to get to that podium pretty soon.
Well,
so.
I was. This is sort of related, so I thought it'd be a great segue. My name is Willow Cheeley. I'm an Andover resident, but a member of North Parish Church. I and John Lenoff, who's via dial-in, are representing today a larger group of concerned citizens interested in improving conditions on Lower Academy Road. And I can hand you a couple of these when I'm done talking here. Some of these interest groups, including the Historical Society, the new CSR building, and North Parish Church, need parking. That parking and overflow from the common is currently happening on the grass and over the edge of the road. It's compacting the soil, killing trees, causing severe erosion, and sending stormwater and sediments out beyond the street. There's also very poor pedestrian and bicycle access. The solution isn't to pave over everything, not in Old Town Center, where the character of the landscape is so important, and not when climate resiliency is so important. So to find functional and aesthetic integrated solutions, our Academy Road group believes that a detailed professional design study would benefit Old Town Center, North Andover. And so I'm here today to find out a little bit more about how CPA works and the design study aspect of it. And I'll pass these things to you just for reference. I just have to, just for your back pocket, you don't have to go over them. But that's primarily my question, is how this sort of project fits in.
Parking on Academy Road. Stop me if you've heard this before. This has been discussed numerous times. Here, Terry, you can take that one. I've got it on the screen here. So studying, so I guess we have to figure out kind of which bucket this comes into, right?
Absolutely,
and that's,
yep.
Does it meet one of our 4 pillars, of affordable housing? No. Historic preservation. It's probably a tougher argument. Recreation and open space, right? So it's not preservation of open space, but there's probably would be some level of a recreation component to it.
Yeah.
However, we do get limits on capital improvements, and for things like parking, we can't pay exclusively for parking lots.
Absolutely, yeah. It's right on the road, though, which is why it's not a separate lot. It's actually something that would be used by the commons, by the local buildings, by Old Town Center. So it's it's kind of in that gray area, which is why,
Right.
your advice would be much
Yeah.
appreciated, because it does touch on a lot of interest groups. And it is part of the character and the way Old Town Center looks and feels. So I understand the construction part might not be part of it, but in terms of a design
In terms
study.
of a design study, it's an interesting question. And
Okay.
I don't know that I know the answer to that
Okay.
right now, because can you fund a design study for something where the end goal is not an allowable use, or not allowable use of CPA funds? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not
Okay,
saying no.
fabulous, that's fine.
But that is something that we have definitely gotten opinions on the ability of CPA to pay for parking in land they're not already acquiring, and we're not allowed to do that.
Okay,
But parking as ancillary to another project, such as when we acquire land for passive recreation, we build parking that can go along with that.
right,
So,
right. And part of this too is the second burial ground is just down the road.
Yep. With project we recommended for funding last year.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, which is fabulous. And there's a streetscape improvement element of this too.
Okay.
I think the shortcut would be to just pave over this area that's a problem, which I don't think anybody wants.
Sure, sure.
I think there's certainly street tree improvements, there's, just again, that character of Academy Road, which is being affected. And, when cars are parking in the bottom there, they're just destroying all that edge. So that's why I understand it's a gray area, and
Yeah.
we thought we would bring it up because it does touch different pieces of things.
No, listen, it's a cause that's, near and dear to CPA and CPC here, who have funded a number of preservation or, conservation lots along
Yeah.
Academy Road, and obviously
Yeah.
it's the jewel of the town. And everyone's very much aware of the parking challenges that come along with that section. So I think everyone in this committee will agree that there's a solution that needs to be found. We just don't know if our hands
Sure
will be tied
is.
on that. So, Tracy, is that you?
That's me.
So we're very much aware, and we agree with you with how the parking works there. So have you had some discussions with folks in the town already?
We have with the planner, and again, I'm from Andover, so
Sure.
I don't know the full, the full structure, so I apologize. We spoke with Jean.
Jean Enright? Yep.
Jean, thank you. She came out to the site, took her time very, very nicely to talk through that.
Yep.
Dan has been great. I've been talking to him a little bit about this.
Okay.
So it is, and again, we understand that the implementation piece is another
Sure.
piece, but that design study, because I think the last thing we want to do is just have this be a parking project.
Sure.
We'd love to have it connect into the other pieces and make that more functional and aesthetically pleasing for everybody. And obviously, I threw in some green infrastructure stuff in there in the packets, because that is something that I think for the climate resiliency piece, you could get the aesthetics by not just paving it, and you could also deal with some of that stormwater at the same time too. And I know North Andover has a lot in town already.
Certainly.
I think it'd be complementary to the stuff going on in the CSR building. I think would be a great way to integrate. But that requires that design study piece of making sure all the interest groups and it's a good design at the end of the day, and not just how many cars can you stuff into that space.
Agreed. And, so I think what we can do, I don't know if this falls under the support for recreation category, which would not be allowable, just
Okay.
to be clear. But we can do some more digging on our end. And
Thank you.
We
Yeah,
don't want you
and-
to spin your wheels. We'd absolutely like to let you know.
No, and we're early days of the process in
Sure.
some ways. We've got interest, we've got lots of groups ready to go. We know that there's a problem that needs to be addressed, but
Yep.
we're still sort of finding our way. So, any advice would be appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So the area of Academy Road that you're talking about, that's a public way?
Yes, and that's
So
sort of
the key word that came up, and I know it's not CPC related, but it is, to me, town related, is erosion.
yes.
And hopefully Gene's able to give you more input, and maybe somehow that's put on their own, that within the town budget itself. I'm just throwing out idea.
Yes, and I think the question with that, though, is it could be just a bunch of riprap gets put in and that solves the erosion problem, but it doesn't solve the larger issue of character and connection and all those big pieces there.
I understand.
So I agree with you there. There is a short-term solution.
We buried the wires for the aesthetics, so that was done through the town. citizens pay for it through their electrical bill, but, I mean,
Okay,
but the phone, but anyways, it wasn't CPC money that did that.
understood. Yep. Yeah, and you're exactly right. This is where we're trying to find our footing in terms of what bucket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Excellent. We appreciate you taking the time. That presentation is terrific.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. What are we doing next?
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Kathleen Keenan. I'm the director of the Stevens Memorial Library.
Welcome.
So first, of course, we have to thank you because you've been so supportive of the library and the building over the years. And I'm hoping that come next spring and summer, we're going to actually get to work on the historic steps, which you've already sponsored. We have a list of big things we wanted to do to the building and around the building. And after we finished the steps, the next project was to do something with what I refer to as the triangle lawn, which abuts the granite steps. And for a long time, we wanted to make it be an outdoor space that was usable because we have people who come now to sit in that area. This past year and a half with COVID, one of the things that we've seen, especially at times when the building had to be closed, we would have people outside in different areas, sometimes just bringing their lawn chairs because they could get to our Wi-Fi from that space. So we know it's a usable area that people are already using. We want to make it be a more formal space. So we would be coming forward this year with a proposal for, and come probably with a design and a concept in mind already, and hopefully some pricing to try to get support for doing, and I'm going to say the entire property because you're not going to touch one section of the outside without considering what's it look like as you start to wrap around the building to keep the character to the entire space, but to really create, and some people will refer to it as an outdoor room. It's obviously doesn't have doors and walls, but it has permanent seating areas, for instance. And thanks to COVID, we're seeing new products come out. So you're seeing things like outdoor charging Wi-Fi equipment and charging statements that would make it be a space that's more usable in at least 3 seasons of the year. I'm not sure we want to sit out there in the wintertime, but we might find some hardy souls out there too. So that's what we're thinking about and coming forward. So I just wanted to make sure that that fit with sort of the scope of why we would bring it to CPC rather than CIP.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think this runs into the similar question that we have, which of the buckets does it fall into? Obviously, with the building being historic in nature. Have you guys ever done a historic grounds study of the property to understand whether, you're talking about the point
Yes.
area, right, out in front? Or could this potentially fall into an open space or recreational type use is probably
And
more?
that's how we tend to think of it
Yeah.
as open space and recreation,
Yeah.
turning the space into something more usable.
Sure.
Rather than just planting new grass and keeping it mowed, can we create the space that's more functional?
Yeah, it's I think we sometimes often forget that recreation doesn't always mean, baseball and soccer fields, right? So I think it definitely could fall into those sorts of buckets, so.
Okay.
Was there any kind, now I'm just legitimately curious if there was any kind of historic landscape layout of the property at all?
I don't think that there's been a formal study there. I certainly have photographs that show the transitions over time.
Okay.
So the brick pathway that's there now was originally, in that space, was actually a driveway
Okay,
in the very original building, so 1907.
okay,
There was a certain amount of lawn, there was the driveway, and then a sidewalk. So you could actually drive up to the granite
kind of
steps.
like a curved road, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, we don't want to go back that far.
No, we definitely don't want to. We've taken care of the bricks. We're taking care of the steps. We're looking to continue the use of the space there to make it more usable.
Okay, well, that's interesting, that's exciting.
Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was your job? Don't date yourself. Hello,
Good evening.
good evening.
Hello.
I'm Amy Maxner. I'm the Conservation Administrator for the town. So hello.
How are you?
I've only met 1 out of 4 of you, so.
And I'm Taylor Andrews, Conservation Field Inspector for the town as well.
Welcome.
We work together.
Yeah. So we have just a seedling of an idea, really, and it sprung from a high school student who needed to do some field hours as part of her environmental studies course. So we are helping her with that, and part of it is we're going to take her onto the Amazon site, which she's very, very excited about. But the other thing was Taylor's idea, which this is his background actually, is looking at some invasive species management. And initially, Taylor thought, well, I'll take her out to one of our open spaces and, you know, I'll teach her what, you know, bittersweet looks like and how to, you know, attack it. And I don't know how we stepped back to maybe look at it more holistically, but the idea dawned on us that perhaps we could be more comprehensive in our approach, that we could look at perhaps an open space that was acquired with CPC funds and maybe do you know, an invasive species survey on the property and you know, make multi-phased efforts to remove and manage and perhaps even replant with natives.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
native species. You know, just to provide an ecological improvement, and then we could possibly also have educational signage to sort of educate the public about the benefits of native plants and, you know, why invasive species are a detriment to the environment. Things like that. As Amy said, we're still in the very early stages. We just wanted to come to you guys and get your thoughts and see if this is the sort of, you know, thing that you'd be open to working with us on. So that's pretty much where we're at this point.
Well, if we can't find a lot, I've got some bittersweet in my backyard. You're welcome to take a look at it.
Unfortunately.
I think, you know, just again, getting back to the theme of the night, you know, for it to be allowable through CPA, I think if this were to fall under that rehabilitation, right, if it's rehabilitation of open space by removing invasive species, the property would need to have been acquired using CPA funds to be allowable for that. So that may narrow your search a little bit in terms of which properties to look at. And if you guys, I'm assuming you already have a list of which ones have been funded through CPA dollars in the past. If you're not, Dan or I can certainly provide you one. That's certainly an interesting program. And anyway, would you expand this beyond, obviously, this one student? Would that be kind of the idea?
Yeah, I mean,
I think we would need a number of volunteers that we could sort of lead and work with.
right. I mean,
And
even
it's
if
a-
it was, you know, a college student, you know, maybe a paid internship to help with the surveying, you know, survey of the species or whatever to add on to their, you know, resume, but. But I
And-
think it's a good opportunity for us to team up with either, you know, high school students or college students and lend to their real-life experience and gain some help along the way for us.
And the costs associated with that would come mainly in the form of what, labor and, you know, acquiring
I think-
new.
I don't think necessarily so much labor.
Okay.
I would
For the
say
survey.
native, for the survey,
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
yeah,
I assume there'd be some sweat equity, right?
yeah.
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 And then plant material
Right.
for replanting,
Okay.
things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys, I'm not familiar with your process, but I suspect that you require some sort of in-kind matches or some sort of matching funds to bring to the table?
You know, we've done matching fund projects in the past, you know,
Yeah.
where appropriate. I mean, one that we recommended last year was for, you know, for the Mass Trails grant was, you know, for the rail trail proposal was tied to a matching grant from, I think it was from Mass Trails. But that doesn't, it's not always a requirement.
Okay.
You know, if you were to come to us and say, here's our proposed project, you know, we need to have a paid internship to conduct this survey, you know,
Yeah.
in year one, and in year two, we'll be coming back to you with an understanding of, okay, we've identified on these 3 parcels, this is what needs to be done, this is what we anticipate we're going to put in for labor, and this is what our estimate is to
Yeah.
replace the plants or whatever else needs to be done. You know, I think that would be the process that you would go about with that. Things like signage and educational kiosks and all that stuff, I think it's probably a little bit beyond our ability to fund in some of those instances. It even gets tricky sometimes on historic stuff where you know, there is you know, definitely a clear use for it. Sometimes that even gets a little tricky for us to be able to fund those items, depending on the project. If they're ancillary to a project, it can be possibly in place. So.
Great.
So was there something similar or something done before where somebody was trying to get a certain percentage of the town to go after invasive?
I'm not sure, but I know my predecessor, Jen Hughes, I know she obtained grant funds to do some work, and I forget where, but I do remember seeing correspondence in the files that,
You know,
Yeah.
people could go to meetings and then they could do this, similar to what you're talking to. They could do it on their property, and then if a certain percentage of the town did it, we were called, we got
okay.
some type of a thing, a grant, because we did it. And I know we did
Okay.
the schools, there was a
okay.
bunch of different things
Okay.
that we did. So there has been something like this done. I think the Stevens Estate participated in that too. I think they might have some information on that.
Interesting.
Great. I'll look into it.
Yeah.
I'll ask Jean, she'll probably know. She knows everything.
Yeah.
She tends to have a good handle on
Yeah.
that. So.
Thank you, it's great.
Great. So
Yeah.
before I go, I have to make a plug. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we have a Pollinator Garden that were installed in front of the building, and we can thank Taylor Andrews for that.
Oh, nice.
Well done.
Because I actually saw somebody downstairs, I said, who did that garden? And they told me it was you.
That
So
was his
thank you for that.
brainchild, absolutely. So
Yeah,
Excellent.
Come a long way.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks.
Take care.
Who would like to go next?
Steve?
No?
Yeah, he's coming.
He's gone? Oh. I assume you're all in here just to be in an audience, although it's great if you are.
Steve Nugent, 35 Hollow Tree Lane, North Andover. I'm also the Director of Athletics at North Andover High School. And the last time I was in this room was about 6 months ago, interviewing for the job right there. So it's nice to be back. Thank you. So I'm here representing, let me backtrack. When I first got the job in July 1, I've lived here most of my life, and I reached out to a lot of people who were stakeholders in North Andover and had ideas for how we can improve the quality of the experience of our student athletes and all of our spectators and parents and anyone who cared about North Andover. And one of those people I met with mentioned the idea of, bringing our cross-country team back home, where they currently run and compete in Andover out at Harold Parker. Parents have to pay, we have to bus them, there's no home field advantage. This was coupled by the fact that we also train on the roads a lot, and because there's so many trails nearby that really maybe could use a little bit more of an enhancement or an improvements. So the idea was given to me, and we ran with it, and I've met with many people who work in this building, the school side of things, and I believe we're prepared to put a proposal forward to have the committee consider funding some trail enhancements that already exist and creating a little bit more trail access to the Usla property that's up by the Stevens Estate. So that's something I know that the school district is prepared to move forward with. We're in the process of gaining a quote to give a ballpark for the group, but I wanted to make sure I took the opportunity to introduce myself and share the idea.
Terrific.
So I walked Steve through through those fields, and we walked with the coaches, and we saw what was available, and it really suits their needs really well. It's right next to the school, but there's a second use for this. It's the one that whole area is probably the only flat, dry, really easy to maintain area. So almost anybody at any age or any ability can go out for a walk and enjoy the town. A lot of our trails are up hills and up and down and up and down. This is not so much. And like I said, it stays pretty dry even after rainstorms and that type of thing. So it suits his purposes really well, but it suits the entire town really well. It has multiple accesses where you can come in and go out. We can put parking lots in. We have things we can do to make that work. And I think we're going to really, the entire town's going to get a big benefit from it.
Yeah, to piggyback, if you don't mind, Terry, the cross-country team, they might host 2 home meets a year. So we would really only run 2 meets. So the other 363 days out of the year would be accessible. The improvements would be accessible to all the residents. I think it's a really nice step forward for us as a group. We've got some amazing trails and views up there. And I really feel like if we enhanced it and utilized that flat area a little bit more, I think a lot more people would get an opportunity to experience it and really and just appreciate it.
I'm pretty far removed from my cross-country running days. How long of a course would you be able to get on that property? Would you connect to any of the other trail networks out there, or would it be exclusive to the Usler?
Yeah, great question. So in theory, it's anywhere from 2.8 miles to 3.1. It doesn't have to be one continuous loop. It can be, you can loop through. And so we've got a whole bunch of ideas. Bill Varney is really the brains of the operation. He's really studied this area and come up with a whole bunch of different ideas using existing trails if we enhance them just a little bit, and then creating a little bit more access through that Usla property.
So when they say enhance, pretty much mulch type, keep them dry and safe,
Right.
for everybody.
Have the trails even been cut yet? Because I know we talked about there were certainly some couple of creeks that need to be crossed and.
Right, so would need 2 footbridges to go over.
Okay.
Yeah, and we brought conservation out there. She walked it. It's funny she's here. She walked through the site and she saw it, and we talked about the footbridges, and everything seemed to be okay. Obviously, once we set up the actual trail, it'd have to all be approved by conservation and all that, but.
And have you had discussions with the folks from Friends of North Andover Trails as well? About
I walked it with Glenn.
You did?
And Glenn and I and Bill Varney walked it as well. And he was, again, verbally super supportive and just a lot of nice ideas. And really, we even talked about, where we would put the trailheads or the access points. I've talked to as many people that would listen to me with this idea, just to make sure that we crossed a lot of our T's and so forth.
And the idea would also be that the kids would be able to, on practice days, be able to get there from the high school, right?
Yeah.
Directly? Yeah.
Interestingly enough, and I don't have the history on this, Bill Varney would, Bill Callahan can attest to that, but I think we were probably training and competing at our facility on the roads and then some of the trails maybe up to 15 years ago. And then since then, because of, I think there was an accident at some point in time, and it was just not, as traffic increased, it wasn't safe for our athletes. But yeah, they would be able to train out there more and just have an easier access.
Actually, you have a home field advantage. How's that?
Well, yeah.
That'd be nice. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you to Terry for really pushing this forward, and Steve and everybody, because I just think it's fantastic. I think it's it's awesome for the athletes, and it's really moving an area, like you said, Terry, little home advantage. It's just great. And it's great for the public at large as well. So I thank you guys.
That's terrific.
Okay.
I don't know that I have any other questions.
Yeah, no?
Tim?
I'm good.
You good?
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Steve, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for the time. I appreciate it.
Good. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak or ask questions or comment in general? Okay. I think with that, if there is no one else, we'll probably need a motion to close the public hearing. If that's the case.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Call it unanimous. The public hearing is closed. Thank you all for attending. Really do appreciate it. You're welcome to stay and listen to us discuss our minutes from last meeting if you would like. But I understand if you want to move on to your families. Thank you very much for your interest. Appreciate it. But Tracy, hang on, our meeting is not adjourned.
Don't worry, I'm here. Sorry I'm not there.
That's
but-
okay. Better safe than sorry.
Well, that's the thing. I got the negative today. I still feel a little iffy, but
I hear you.
exactly.
I hear you. They kicked me out of my office for a while.
Yeah,
So I
well,
just came back from Las
again,
Vegas.
better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm triple. I even got the boost. I was blaming it on that, so I don't know.
I got the booster. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so I guess thank you. We'll give folks a few minutes for it to quiet down here. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I would ask if folks are having conversations, if they wouldn't mind having them out of the room so we can just finish our meeting. Thank you.
Could we finish the conversations out?
Excuse me, folks. Could we finish conversations out in the hall, please? Thank you. Appreciate it. Don't want to kick you all out, but. Okay, back to the agenda. We'll go to the approval of our minutes from last meeting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Call it unanimous. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the financial report for the month of October. It is in everyone's meeting packet. I didn't have any questions or comments that needed to be made on this unless anyone else does. I did not see anything in here that looked to me as if it needed to be closed out.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
how do you know they don't need to be closed out when they're dated 2011, 2013? Dates here.
Which ones are you talking about?
Well, the rolling, the example is the very first one in the Rolling Ridge. For example, I'm relying upon Brian here to say that it doesn't need to be closed out, but it's been approved since 2011, and there's still $79,000 left on the bucket. So how do you know that?
Sure. Well, we did go through all of these, actually, maybe been a few months ago at this point, where we went through every single project.
Okay.
And the various stakeholders say, okay, where are we on this one? Do we have a quarterly report? We are due for a review of that, I would say, to have the folks back in and get an update as to where they are on.
So is that
on
the
those.
process? You have everyone come in and?
Well, I mean, some of them we can kind of skip through, right? We know where the middle school fields project
Yeah,
stands,
I know where
right?
that one is,
So when we don't have one, in previous meetings, for instance, CJ was able to address most of the historic stuff, understanding, okay, here's where it's at. Yes, that can be closed out. No, we're still working on, we're waiting on this or that. So
That one there got tied up. We changed the boundary.
At Rolling Ridge,
It took
yeah.
us a little bit to change the boundary.
This is the Rolling Ridge?
Yes.
Okay.
So we finally got, I'm not even sure the attorney's done with that. But once it's done, the Trails Group is going in and cutting the trail through to bring it down to the lake. And they finished the parking lot last year, So that's done, but that was the holdup on that. So there was it was what the lawyers, and they had to change the boundaries of where we're accessed, where we're able to access.
I mean, that's a good example, but I was just wondering what the process was.
Sure.
I guess I wasn't around for that meeting a few months ago when,
Yeah, it was before we were part of, so actually it's
Yeah.
probably longer ago than I'm giving it
so
credit
all
for.
these are familiar to you guys, and I
For the
get
most
that,
part,
and
but-
they're of record somewhere. Okay.
I would say do an update. I think we went through in a single meeting. I think we closed out probably 15 or so projects at least. And we are due to do that again. I think it's fair to run through it and just double check a lot of these, because you're right, there's a story behind a number of them. So what I would suggest is we probably put that on the agenda for next meeting. And it usually helps to have more of the committee here, because different folks are going to have different information. And we can run through them all one by one and understand where they are. And if we don't have a report on them, or we haven't heard from them, there hasn't been an expenditure in a number of months, we can go back and get the answer as to why and close things out and revert the funds back.
Okay.
So, fair point. I was probably a little quick in saying nothing needs to be closed out right now, but it's a
Obviously,
fair point.
You had some information, so
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions on the financial reports? Okay, excellent. Next is update on the Academy Road parcel, and just for, this got referenced a little bit when we were talking about the lower Academy Road section around at the Old Town Center. We've had obviously a number of discussions regarding some of the parcels that were acquired through, or that were protected through the conservation easement with Center Realty Trust, specifically the property adjacent to the Old North Church and the property at 140 Academy Road. So we've had some discussions on that, and Melissa, the town manager, met with CRT this week to discuss some changes to that parcel specifically. One of the discussions has always been around putting a parking lot on it, improving public access to that parcel, to make it a little bit conform in a different way to the conservation easement. So I think there's a lot of discussions that are going around that. And I think what we're next step is to have a small meeting with the folks at CRT on site. And Bill and Tracy have been kind of spearheading this particular project. So if it's okay with the committee here, I'd like to suggest that Bill, Tracy, and I meet with the trustees at CRT on site and representing the CPC and have some discussions there about what can be some potential solutions for that parcel.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
Bill or Tracy, I don't know if you have any other comments on this in particular, but
No, I think it's good we're getting some movement, and, we can have a discussion and try to figure out how to, get it closer to its intended use.
sure.
I concur with Bill on that sentiment. Yeah, I feel like we're making some positive movement forward. So we'll keep being positive and moving forward.
Well said. I think that the goal would be to have that meeting prior to our next meeting, so that the three of us can report back to everyone on the progress and keep pushing
That sounds
forward.
great.
Great, excellent. All right, next on our agenda is a update on the community preservation website. I think Tim, this is
Yeah.
your honeydew.
Just trying to explore what's on the website and how do I get my meaty hands on it. And where I feel like I have some technical capabilities, I certainly floundered like I was an Apple Dumpling Gang member relative to this meeting. And I am so embarrassed and
Apple
apologetic.
dumpling, I love it.
Tracy, I got to tell you, it was like, what? I got to do what? And poor Dan's trying to walk me through things. He says, "Oh, you have that button, this button. It's got a little pencil." I know pencil.
That's great.
And just to let people know, I have a Mac at home. Don't drag and drop the existing meeting into the next date, because all of a sudden you become the owner and everything is all messed up.
Ah, got it. That's what.
So I promise you, Dan, I will never, ever, 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 ever touch the damn thing. However, I am anxious to get into the website because there's a lot of cleanup and consolidation, and I did, Tracy, I can send this to you later. This is a little sample picture of that I sent to Dan in trying to explain to him what I see right now on the existing map of projects that we have identified. And these are obviously spaces projects. And the way I've described it, Tracy, is that I've got 3 parcels of land here that there's been a marker associated with. And so you click on the marker, and it says, town common property, but it's, the address for it is 46 Osgood Street, which is way off mark.
Right, okay.
Drummond Park, it's the playground, rather. Again, the parcel that it's identified with is 36 Andover Street. And that was an embarrassing moment when I talked to the woman there and said, hey, somehow you're involved with it. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I sort of talked to Brian about maybe somehow cleaning it up, and then speaking with Dan the best way to do about it. First of all, the existing map is some of the older technology the town still has, but it's old. So Dan's looking at, and thank you, Dan, is to actually export the existing information, and he thinks there's a lot of information in that database, exporting it so that it can be imported and reused by the more current version of the GIS system. 1, 2, we got pictures. I've been doing pictures, adding pictures to that information. 3, we threw out, there's other things going on there. We'll put in the approved project plan so that the people here can click on that and say, oh, that's what that was all about. Some of this stuff won't exist. I get it. That's just the way it is.
It all will going forward, I promise you.
But
that.
it's a comprehensive, complete database. And one suggestion, which sort of piqued my interest, had to do with the status and transparency of existing projects, and somehow integrating that, the financials, in there somewhere. Because right now, there's some need there, and I'd like to tackle it. Dan's trying to get me permission to be able to muck up the internet again, but I believe if you keeping me offline, Dan, on this kind of project, and then having it approved at the right stages, will go a long ways to having a nice, clear picture, both maps, pictures, underlying documentation, and whatever that people may want to see.
I think it's fantastic.
So I'm
really.
just sort of moving along at my pace, but if the next thing is to bug Dan again, and I know how to do that. All I have to do is move my calendar.
Do you foresee this being anything that you may need some of the administrative funds for use?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about that a little bit. I don't know enough to be a little dangerous, but there could be.
Okay.
We could get somebody in here to actually do it, but it depends on how much can be exported, imported into the new GIS, and that may go a long ways. And if it's as easy as identifying where the property really is, as opposed to some widow's house on
Who's
Andover
afraid
Street.
that her deceased husband had sold the property without telling her? Is that
Yeah.
Oh.
And anyways, well, I'm having fun on the committee so far.
If you get to the point where you want to know where some of the old projects are, I'd be happy to take you around.
I will. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
John mentioned the same thing. I am interested in it because we have done great things with the money here, great things, and we need to broadcast it and be good about it. So, yeah.
Listen, just when I was going through my presentation last year for town for the 20-year history, trying to gather up, okay, where are all the projects and what we spent all the money on, it's having a nice centralized database of it is important. And I think the community preservation organization.
It is kind of missing it.
Yeah.
There are pieces. Yeah, one
That's
year, not the year, other year. So yeah.
So I guess what I would say is if you want to come forward with hey, here's the design, here's what these caption boxes might look like. Is it possible to keep appropriation amount spent, everything from our financial report in those caption boxes? I don't know how.
I agree with you.
Maintenance is the biggest issue, right? Keeping that up to date.
But if it's a do it once stupid kind of a concept, you need financials here all the time.
Yep.
And the same source is there.
Right.
It's a matter of you could either call it up on a monitor for everyone to see. You don't need paper.
Yep.
Or everyone just prints a piece of paper off of it.
I think the biggest value to me is making sure it's really easy for the public to get to, right? Because finding our financial reports, they're public if you really want to go dig through our meeting agendas and find them. But having them right there on the website, I think is a...
Yeah, right now it's not easy. You're right. You can find stuff pretty much, but it's not easy.
Correct, yeah. Well, I think this is great, so
Just one of those
I love it.
keep trucking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
okay.
Dan, again, I promise I won't touch the frickin'
That's all right. I apologize to the folks in the audience who lost 15 minutes, but that's okay. It all worked out in the end, so. Okay, I have nothing else on our agenda tonight.
And then just timing-wise, and actually, we should have thought about it while everyone was still in the room, but our application due date,
February 4th, Dan, right?
February 4th, and everyone I talked to who showed up tonight knows that. I made sure everyone who touched base had access to the application.
Great.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Okay. Do we have another motion?
Move for adjournment?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second with Terry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Colleen, we are
Happy
adjourned.
holidays to all.
Thank you, everyone.